Are you a brave, confident, and assertive female leader? Do you sometimes feel reluctant, though, to reach out to potential clients or post a video or a selfie on social media? Do you struggle with giving hard feedback to team members or colleagues? And how about boundaries? These are all areas where I've noticed some women have a gap in the masculine energy in their businesses. Isn't it ironic? In our last episode, I talked about how we can have so much harsh masculine energy and be so hard on ourselves, striving, berating ourselves, acting too much like a mean boss. I advocated that we need to balance it by bringing in more of the feminine. But there's a place in our businesses for both healthy masculine and feminine energy. Not men and women, but masculine and feminine qualities. Today, I'm going to be talking about the beneficial masculine quality of father energy, also known as the father archetype. Now, not your father, but archetypal father. In this episode, I'm going to cover what exactly the father archetype is, why it's effective to bring it into your business, 5 specific areas in which you might want to bring it in, and how to access it so you can be more productive, decisive, and effective, and of course, more profitable and joyful. You'll hear from the expert who works with my clients and me on archetypes, and from a couple of my clients with their takes on the father archetype and their relationship to this energetic signature. I'm Samantha Hartley of Profitable Joyful Consulting, and this is The Feminine Advantage, a 6-part series that tackles key challenges and opportunities for women consultants. This is episode 2. If you've never heard this podcast before, welcome. This series is a great place to start. Be sure to favorite or follow on your preferred podcast app so you don't miss a thing. And if you're a regular listener, welcome back. I created this series especially for you. Now, archetypes can seem really theoretical, so I wanted to ground this with some references. We have many examples in pop culture of father archetype, whether it's classics like Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird and George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life, or more modern examples like Captain Jean-Luc Picard from Star Trek The Next Generation, or Ted Lasso. My favorite version is from a film I adore called Master and Commander. Now, it's an extremely masculine film. It's basically war at sea. And Russell Crowe is the commander in question. He is so wonderful in this movie. He's paternal, strong, decisive, and fair. He exudes a calm in the chaos, balancing his toughness with this deep sense of responsibility and care for his crew. All of the men on board his ship, there are men and boys, there's like children working on this ship, they feel loyal to him and safe in his presence. And that, to me, is our opportunity with the father archetype to create safety for our feminine aspects. I remember one of the first times I experienced this energy showing up in my business. I very often talk on this show and with my clients about what I call grown-up conversations, the kind that you have when you have to sit down with a client during contract negotiations, or with a team member who isn't performing, or any situation where you need to be direct and serious and mature. This was years ago, within the first 5 or 6 years of my consulting business. I was working on a project with a client. The specifics aren't important, but the way I arranged payments with this particular client was in 3 installments, one at the beginning, one in the middle, and one at the end. Now, if you've listened to this show, you know I highly discourage project-based work and never, ever structure your payments this way. But this was before I knew all that. Everything was on schedule in the work with the client, so I had an appointment with him where I was going to pick up that second payment. A little context here. These were very lean times for me in my business. I always say that I understand what it's like for my clients to experience the revenue roller coaster because I have been there myself. So this was peak revenue roller coaster time. And when I went to get this payment, I really needed the money. I really, really, really needed the money. This was pretty much the only money that I had coming in, and I had bills that were literally due. I needed to leave there with this money. Not doing so was not an option. So as you may suspect by now, after our meeting, when I asked the client for the check, which took a lot of courage, he looked very surprised and said, "Why would I give you a second payment? You haven't done anything." This was a person who worked in buildings and properties and was used to seeing visible evidence of work like foundations and walls. And I, as a person who works with strategies and plans, had been doing tons of work in brand discovery, customer interviews, and with his team on all kinds of things. And I said, here are the specific things that I've done. And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Here's what we've done." Inside my head, I started to realize I need to get paid. He does not want to pay me. And I now have to get very intentional about how I'm handling this conversation. Archetypes are universal patterns or symbols that represent human qualities or themes that appear across different cultures and situations. They help us to understand and relate to these various aspects of ourselves and others. Examples include the hero, father and mother, the warrior, the lover, goddess, king and queen, advocate, alchemist, victim, fool. In past episodes, we've talked about the saboteur archetype and also hermit and child. I will link to those episodes in the show notes. And I may have mentioned in our last episode that one of my archetypes is warrior. So sitting with my client that day, I had a flash of anger and thought, do I want to bring in my warrior archetype and argue and get fierce? Well, since this client was a former professional athlete, among other things, that did not seem like a good idea. And honestly, in a situation where there's disagreement, but not necessarily conflict, it just didn't seem like the right element to bring in. I also have teacher archetype, which you'll hear me use on the show all the time. I'm teaching you how to do things. We're covering curriculum. I'm giving assignments. But this didn't seem like a moment when I should begin to teach this client about the way contracts work, that we have an agreement at the beginning that you're going to do this thing, and then we get here and see this is the part where you do that thing. That just didn't seem wise. I also have queen archetype, and that one is very much about the good of the realm and being a confident, graceful, poised authority, having the vision for what all of us can be and empowering the people I work with to achieve that vision. And being in both service and leadership, it might seem like that's a perfectly reasonable archetype to bring into this meeting, but it didn't seem like grace and poise were going to get me where I needed to be in this situation. So who did I need here? I needed to embody someone who was, above all, dispassionate, unemotional, rational. I needed a calm, masculine energy. I also needed to be direct, to basically tell this client what I expect. I needed responsible masculine energy because by holding the responsible masculine energy, I could invoke and evoke a similar energy from my client. And I needed to be pragmatic. Father archetype brings the structure in a specific, fact-based aspect of myself. In that moment, I kind of flipped into all those qualities and I had a very calm, pragmatic conversation with my client. Inside, I was freaking out. I had that voice saying, oh my God, what happens if this doesn't work and I leave here without money? But I was able to quiet that voice and communicate very clearly with the client. Either we agree that the work has been done and he pays for the work, or we don't agree and we will part ways. And so in that moment, very calmly, not a threatening ultimatum, just a very clear path of you do option A or option B. And that day, I left with a check for that second payment. And the rest of the work with that client went according to plan. It turned out just fine. I got paid. Everyone was happy. It was the kind of lesson you don't want to learn more than once. This is why I talk with my clients about Father Archetype, because it's a specific set of masculine qualities that so many women can benefit from in their businesses. A lot of my clients immediately identify with it if I ask them, you have Father Archetype? They have a visceral yes to it. So let's understand it better. To me, the defining qualities of Father Archetype are that it's calm, direct, dispassionate, and decisive. It's like an ISTJ or ESTJ if you know Myers-Briggs. It is generative, producing offspring, whether that's literal children or business ideas or making money. It protects, guides, and supports the feminine. I want to introduce you to Christopher Carrick, a spiritual director who works with my clients and me on our archetypes and on business as a spiritual path. He's also my husband. When I spoke with Christopher about this topic, he started here.
I think for your audience, the value of talking about mother and father archetype is that we come from oneness to this realm, which is about duality. Everything has an opposite and everything is defined by its opposite. So the question is, will you polarize or will you cooperate with that other? There is me and there is other. And I also contain both. So it's going to define my relationship to other, both externally and internally. For entrepreneurs, the relevance is this is a creative endeavor that they're engaged in. And these are the two halves of the creative force, the mother and the father. They are more specific versions of masculine, feminine.
I thought it was fascinating to consider both mother and father for a minute in the ways those energies show up in our businesses.
One way to think about it is that the mother archetype is about the inner realm and the father archetype is about the outer realm. So when you put them together, you get wholeness, right? The mother is about the internal creative process, the gestating and the birthing. But also if you think of the home, she's about keeping the internal environment safe, nurturing, and loving. The father archetype is about enabling that to take place, making sure that it's safe, making sure that it has resources, making sure that it has everything it needs, and helping the creation, the project, to grow and give it guidance as it proceeds into the outer world. There's the issue of the outside world versus the inside world. So the masculine is going to be about negotiating the outside world. The feminine is going to be guidance, but it's going to be guidance about getting in touch. It's about self-care. It's about what conversation you're having. The one that's about relationships, that's about emotions, that's about passionate creativity. That's going to be more of the feminine conversation. The masculine is going to be more like structural and maintenance and procedures and concepts.
So the masculine energy here is providing a safe container and resources, including earning the money, for the feminine to exist inside of, to create and grow. If you're queasy about the money part of your business, finances and numbers, that's an opportunity to bring in more masculine energy and possibly father archetype.
Father versus mother archetype is mother is going to be more heart-centered. Father is going to be more mind-centered. Now, it doesn't mean there's no emotion in father, but one of its strengths is to step back, to have objectivity, to have a healthy distance or detachment so that it can make sound judgments that aren't overly emotionally fraught. That kind of overseeing, big picture holding role is really appropriate.
I love several things here. That healthy distance and detachment, which gives us objectivity, overseeing the big picture and providing a structure and container for it is vital. And then there is action.
If like the feminine creates the dream, then the masculine does the execution. The feminine's job is to say, here's what it could be. And the masculine says, so then this is what we would have to do. That's the action part. Also, courage to take action, going out and facing the outside world, doing the difficult thing.
Doing difficult things. Related to that, I mentioned 5 ways to use the father archetype in your business. And this is the first one. A difficult thing. Outreach. My client Kristen had been gestating these outreach messages to her network. She had carefully selected who she'd contact, when, and with what message to get their attention and interest. She'd considered the contacts' point of view, like what's in it for them. But then, paralysis. Why? Well, the potential for rejection felt too vulnerable. She started questioning herself, and her strategy, even her value. Have you ever felt this way? This is the feminine, empathetic aspect who did the creative part of the work, but is now stuck. Here's Christopher again.
To me, that's one of the big advantages of archetypes is, as I said to many of your clients, many of the problems we experience are when we don't have the right aspect of us in the right job. When we send a part of us that isn't good at doing this to go do the negotiating or to do the boundary setting or to set the vision. When you have the wrong aspect, the one that isn't designed to do that, then things are going to get all thrown off.
All thrown off because outreach is a job for a different archetype. It's the perfect job for the father archetype. I have walked countless clients through this. Just hit send, just hit post. But I feel shy. I don't want to be a burden. Will they be annoyed? Will I seem needy? If you access that father energy, and suddenly the same people are like, okay, done. Then they're elated. Kristen texted to me like a few minutes after that. OMG, I heard back from 3 of the 5 and they all said yes to talk to me. I was like, of course they did. So in a bit, we're going to go into how to access that masculine aspect. But I wanted to talk to you about the second appropriate place for that father energy. Contracts, negotiations, and boundaries. You feel how everything here has kind of a legal vibe to it? My clients and I spend a lot of time here. I model this for them when they sign on with me. I walk them through the agreement, word by word, face to face. And I'm in full father mode when I do this because I want us to be clear and open and direct about everything before we start. If you set clear boundaries at the beginning, you avoid 99% of the problems. In my imagination, my father archetype is a lawyer. Your takeaway here is that action step. Always read your proposals and agreements aloud to the client in the meeting when you're reviewing and signing them. When you talk about outcomes, deliverables, scope, timing, all the boundaries get named and everyone hears them. Can't pretend later that we didn't hear them. But if you email a proposal or an agreement, you can just expect something will go off the rails during that engagement. The third area is one I struggled with. I'm such an empath and I'm a P on Myers-Briggs that it was just really difficult for me to make decisions. I could see all the sides, and sometimes when I was in my feminine energy, they all felt valid and persuasive. Christopher explains how he saw this evolve in me.
When Father came online for you, when it came to consciousness, I certainly noticed that it gave you a way to unemotionally consider questions, to have that distance. I think rational is one of the key words, right? So when female goes out of balance, it gets too irrational. It's great for making those kind of intuitive, heart-centered choices. That's one of the big questions when you're saying, who do I want to bring online for this decision? Is this an intuitive choice, or is this look, I'm just looking at the numbers. This is really the answer. I know you don't like it, but this is the answer. And so, for you, once you see the answer, once it presents itself, you have a lot of clarity. And then I think a lot of the struggle goes away because you know the truth. And then you can work with it. And so Father gives you that. It's a great choice to make. And I saw you using it when things felt scrambled. And you could sit back, give yourself time, observe, and let the information organize itself. Or there's a complicated decision. And again, the Father could look at it and say, look, this just doesn't work. That's the answer. You can have feelings about it and thoughts about it, but this is the answer. It just is. And that's where it became extremely expedient. But again, I think it has everything to do with both of those aspects being online so that you're not using it just because that's the one you have access to. You're using it because it's the appropriate choice for this situation. When you felt emotionally confused, that becomes a really great indicator for you. Hey, bring Father online.
My feminine is amazing at intuitive decisions, but when things got emotional or complicated, I got stuck. So there's a trigger for you that you need to bring in more masculine. I'm stuck, I'm ruminating, I can't decide. That is often a sign of the feminine out of balance. If someone's listening to this and they're thinking, I get this archetypal idea, but I don't understand how I would dial that up on demand, what would they need to do?
I'll give you two answers. One is imagine the archetype that you think would be required, would serve you in this situation. And imagine it, start to picture it, and then sort of play act with it. You did a thing with Father, which was like creating a pose. Imitate your idea of it and then see if that starts to generate some of the energy of it. It's acting as if and seeing if it follows. Think of somebody who you think epitomizes this and then just pretend you're them by yourself. What would so-and-so say or do? And see if you can start to stir that energy. The other end of it, I would say, is look at what's already going on. See who's there. So look at what's setting you off, what's bothering you, what you keep ranting about, what you can't stop thinking about, what works, what you love, and then say, well, who is that? What qualities is this thing embodying? Is it showing me? That can start you on the path to recognizing who's already there. So the archetypes that are in shadow or that are in the wrong job or need to be healed, those will be your points of pain. They will show up. They will aggravate you and they will get in your way because they're trying to get you to stop and see them. And then the ones that are thriving too are ready-made. So just take a minute and look at them and say, who is that? What does that remind me of? Of the huge realm of all the archetypes it could possibly be, which do I think this is? Who did I get this from? Who is that like? Who does that remind me from? Is this me being my mother? Is this being my mother when she was in her queen? Et cetera, et cetera.
I began accessing my Father archetype intentionally a few years back through the pose that Christopher mentions. I picture a classic father figure in a tweed blazer by the fireplace, looking out the window. In my modern take, I stand with a mug of tea instead of a pipe. It's a mug of tea and my arm is on an imaginary mantelpiece, and I'm overlooking my garden. But the other thing he mentions about looking at who's there, years before this, when I had that meeting with a non-paying client, I had to find that energy in seconds, by the way, and channel some serious, uncompromising aspect of myself instead of the scared girl that I felt like. So both ways, a pose or finding it within myself, have worked for me. Try them out yourself. The fourth area where I most often help my clients tap into their healthy masculine energy is people management. Whether it's clients, teams, subcontractors, or even family. Dealing with people can be messy and it often overlaps with other areas like decisions, outreach, and boundaries. For example, my client Emma, who's highly empathetic and deeply connected to her emotions, felt nervous about a big meeting. It was a pitch for a huge client, and just minutes before the meeting, she found out that all the top brass were coming. I guided her to get into this energy, to practice the conversation with me, and to use this mantra, calm and confident. She nailed her presentation and got the deal. My client, Kara Levy, is a leadership consultant specializing in communications for C-suite executives and founders. I asked her how she works on this with her clients.
One of the things that you've shared on your podcast before, and also with me, is how Father Archetype looks for you. And you have sort of a vision or an imagining of what that might be and how that person might act. That's really the same thing we do with my clients, except that rather than thinking about a persona, for example, a wise father standing at the mantle with a cup of tea, we might ask them, if you were embodying confidence or boundary setting, what are some of the things that you would actionably do? Maybe you would put your point first and only offer one reason rather than going into a defensive positioning of offering more. Maybe you would decide ahead of time what's non-negotiable for you to be able to offer the highest value to your customer, and so on.
This last area is the most strategic and where I have benefited so much. Getting it done. Father Archetype is about action without overthinking or self-doubt. It is the ultimate JFDI and make it happen. Why is it so effective? I will let Bofta Imam, visibility expert and founder of StoryLead, share her experience.
In running a business, Father Archetype steps in to get things done effectively and efficiently. I think of it when I'm creating processes and systems. It's all Father to me. There's not the nurturing in there. There's no mother in there. It's like, how am I going to get this done so this person understands? Then I don't have to answer 40 questions because it's all in the process documents. That's definitely Father Archetype showing up for that. And I actually think I'm good at that. And I never would have thought that I would be that person, creating a business and creating processes and being good at that. I never would have thought that in my life. Like, what? Wait, what? Why would you? But then I realized it's because of what I want. And what I want is to grow. What I want is to be able to bring on more team members, bring on more clients. And that means I need processes. And so Father Archetype gets it done every time. And I think the Father knows maybe, and I might be misstepping here because I don't know the archetypes as formally as you do, but I feel like Father Archetype knows what he wants. So, okay, great. I want that house with that thing, and I'm going to find a way to get that thing. And I think that's very much Father.
Yes, he's that part of us that is goal-driven, structured, and action-taking. That's the masculine in action. So we've covered a lot here, but before we end, I wanted to zoom out for some cultural context. Last time, in the first episode of this series, I talked about how we see the feminine rising. We're seeing it on the world stage with more women billionaires. We have a woman running for president. We're seeing so many more CEOs and world leaders are women. And that's transforming our collective relationship to the feminine. We are also simultaneously reevaluating the masculine. What are masculine qualities? What does it mean to be masculine? What does it mean to be a man? I think we have a big opportunity to heal collectively, to heal the masculine, so it doesn't need to be toxic. It doesn't need to be violent or even aggressive. It doesn't need to be dominating in order to lead. It doesn't need to be fearless and emotionless to be worthy of respect and love. The expression I've heard a lot is about big dad energy. And that just makes me smile, the idea of it. It's wonderful. What do you take big dad energy to mean?
It's an opportunity for healing. It's a contrast from the wounded masculine that we're experiencing. Because even if you're not the worst version of father or masculine in our culture, you're affected by it. You know, I was raised in the context of this, don't be weak, don't show emotions, it's not okay to do this. And so I had that wound. So seeing it, actually experiencing it, it's almost like it shows you what it could be. It gives you permission to be that. It also allows you to receive it. You can be fathered by watching a television show where here's that wonderful father energy that you wish you had. You can absorb that and you can imitate it. So it puts that vibration into the world in a way that we can access, because otherwise we only have the negative examples and we only experience what we wish it was in its absence or as its absence.
And can you describe if we think about big dad energy, what are the positive qualities of that big dad energy?
I think it's approachable. It feels big and strong, but safe, like accessible, somebody you can go to that is stable, welcoming, warm, and I think in a way can make it better. I think going to the mother energy is saying you have a big feeling and it's okay to feel that. And going to the dad energy is saying you're feeling a certain way and you can be with me and it'll be okay. And maybe we'll even have to do something about it. But it creates a kind of like everything is right in the world because I have the confidence and safety that comes from being with him.
It puts that vibration into the world in a way that we can access. The way we as women can help heal the masculine in the world is by balancing our feminine energy with it, modeling healthy masculine behaviors and qualities in ourselves for the women and the men in our lives. Here is a coaching question for you. What specific situation in your business would benefit from a more structured, fatherly approach? And a journal prompt. Think about the positive role models of the father archetype, both real and fictional. A supportive professor you had, maybe, or Ted Lasso. Which of their qualities can you pull into and use in your business? And an affirmation. I have a strong, confident aspect within myself. Here, you can substitute whatever words, whatever these qualities are that you want to bring forward. I have a direct, responsible aspect within myself. I have a decisive, fair aspect within myself, etc. Whichever you choose to bring forward. I hope this episode has been thought-provoking and will inspire you to pursue the balance of feminine with the masculine aspects of father archetype in your business. Before you go, be sure to visit SamanthaHartley.com for free resources to help you grow your business. And based on what you heard today, that $1 Million Client Proposal template might be a good one to download. And with that, I am wishing you a profitable and joyful consulting business. Thanks for listening. As a thank you for being part of my community, I'm sharing free, exclusive resources to help expand your consulting business. Head to SamanthaHartley.com/super to access bonus content and tools from the show. For a complete transcript of this episode and all profitable, joyful consulting episodes, visit SamanthaHartley.com. I have a confession to make. I hate shopping, but I love the way I feel in beautiful clothes. I love to have new looks, and I really don't want to be seen in the same outfits over and over. But I also don't want to clog landfills with more fast fashion. And because I despise shopping, I've been known to buy too quickly and end up with a closet full of things I don't wear. But everything changed for me when I discovered Armoire. I was heading to a business event in Hawaii and I wanted to look fantastic. I got a gorgeous dress and the cutest jumpsuit. Armoire is like sharing a closet with your girlfriends who just happen to have fabulous taste. Once a month, I choose stunning new selections, and a few days later, a package arrives at my door. New clothes, no shopping. Different looks, no waste. I've rented over $60,000 of designer clothes for just $119 a month, and I'm constantly asked, where did you get that? From Armoire. Try it for yourself. Use my code to get 50% off your first month and 2 free bonus items at SamanthaHartley.com/Armoire.